Hello, all. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our event today on assessing and improving your company's retention, productivity, and neurodiversity awareness. We always start off with some community agreements, so we're going to keep our microphones on mute, turn our cameras on so we have that nonverbal communication. And then please use the chat if you have any questions or comments related to the topic. All of those questions that you throw out there, we'll put in a list and then we'll address them together in discussion at the end. And then, of course, be respectful and friendly in the chat with each other. I'm Stina Borth, and I am the CEO and founder of Keymaker Services, specializing in productivity and neurodiversity. We guide leaders and teams to unlock their full potential through neuroinclusion, emphasizing learning practices that accentuate unique cognitive styles. We advocate for living authentically and inclusively, focusing on positive growth. We enjoy flexibility and embracing the complexity of life that honors all identities while leveraging strengths, and passionate about advocating for neuroinclusion, of course. Outside of work, I am a badass fisherwoman. I love playing darts, enjoy water sports, hiking, and dancing. I actually just completed a hike up Mount Marcy last week in the Adirondacks, and that definitely was, I would say that was one of the hardest hikes I've done. I was met at the peak with lightning and hail and storms, but it was worth every moment of self-talk and working through of, I'm gonna get to that peak. In addition to that, I'm a very proud auntie. So today our goals, we're going to use the scorecard tool and we're going to walk you through it so you can get your feet wet and get comfortable with it, and identifying some of those silent leaks in your training programs, underperformance in your teams, gaps in awareness, and ways to improve your company's retention, productivity, and neurodiversity awareness. I'm going to guide you through that assessment with your organization's overall success, productivity, and engagement. But we're going to go into these neuro definitions first, like we always do with our events, so that we have the same language together. Neurodiversity is that overarching umbrella term, and neurodiversity is the range of differences in individual brain function, behavior, traits, and skills. And it's actually regarded as part of a normal variation in human population. So we have neurodiversity as our overarching term. And then we have neurodivergent, that's on one end of the spectrum of that term. And that's a person, if someone says that they're neurodivergent, that they're a person whose brain works differently than the majority of the population. So typically that's associated with a diagnosis like autism, OCD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and the list goes on. And then on the other end, we have neurotypical. And that's someone who is not neurodivergent. And it's in this end, it's also important to note that many people who are neurodivergent, they haven't realized it yet. Maybe they don't have a proper diagnosis. Sometimes there's inaccuracy in labeling. So sometimes folks that are over here, they will come down that spectrum a little bit. Maybe they're not at that point where they are identified as neurodivergent or with that diagnosable criteria. But we all have neurodiversity within us, within our cognitive function, how our nervous system processes information. That last term on the bottom there of the slide, neuroinclusion, is the effort to recognize neurodiversity in the ways that people's brains work. And we also are putting that effort to leverage this fact by cultivating inclusive environments that embrace and support everyone. So I like acting out a little bit. So I said neurodiversity, overarching, neurodivergent, neurotypical, and then I swoop in and I say neuroinclusion. So that's, if you want to do that with me to retain it a little bit, that's a little trick that I use. All right, so let's get started. You're going to want to download the company scorecard so that you have your own individual PDF. And there should be a link that's being sent out for you. And there's one that's editable, and there's one that's, I think it's just a PDF that you could print too. But this tool is really designed to help you evaluate and enhance the performance and inclusivity of your organization. And there's 5 key areas within this scorecard. There's measurement and success metrics, leadership and training, performance, productivity and skills, operations, and then neuroinclusion and organizational success. So I'm going to give you all a minute just to download that tool so that you can work along with this, because it's always better when you can do it along with some modeling and then you come back to the tool and use it fully. To get most out of this assessment, there's a few tips that we like to suggest. So be honest. You want to be as candid as possible. Candid responses, that's going to provide you with the most accurate picture of your organization. You want to reflect and analyze, take time to think deeply about each question. So how is this applying within my own company? You might even want to engage more members of your team. So involve those key members in the progress of gathering diverse perspectives. And then most importantly is making a plan for action. So when you have that information, actually acting on it, facilitating movement forward for those actionable strategies for improvement. And our overall goal is really to understand and optimize what your organization dynamics are. So from measuring productivity and success to fostering those leadership skills and managing operations efficiently. And we're doing this by focusing on neuroinclusion through this tool and through our work, where we can create environments where employees feel valued and empowered, and we're driving continuous improvement and overall success. So we'll take a minute for you to, let's see, and I think I have a poll here. I just want to make sure I know that everybody or most of us have that downloaded. So please respond to let me know. And as we work through, what we're going to do is we're going to go quickly. So we may get through majority of it. We might not, and we'll definitely follow up afterwards for anything that we don't cover. But we'll take a minute to respond on your own copy for each section. And then I'm going to share an example from a past client that was more than happy to share their scorecard anonymously, and for me to provide some input of how this information guides your next steps. Great. Okay, so we are good to go. So a little bit of background on the example that you're going to be seeing. Most of the responses came from a chief human resource officer. It was for a mid-sized tech company. Their main focus was optimizing workforce productivity, enhancing employee performance, and then implementing some data-driven practices. So they really were looking for initiatives that could directly impact their business outcomes and drive efficiency. They wanted tools, strategies that could enhance employee productivity and performance, but they were really looking for a competitive edge, reducing inefficiencies, and then improvement in their KPIs related to workforce productivity, employee output, overall business performance. Some of the challenges that they came to our working relationship was balancing that need for that rapid productivity improvements, because they also, while they were trying to address employee engagement, they had a need for performance as their company was scaling. And so they wanted to balance that rapid productivity improvements along with long-term employee satisfaction as a key concern. So like I said, we might not get through every section, but if we don't, we will follow up with it. So please look for an email in your inbox afterwards. As well as if you want to send me your completed scorecard via email, I absolutely would be able to give you some preliminary review of that in that way too, or you can schedule a time for us to chat about it. All right, so let's get going. And can I get a couple thumbs up from anybody? Let me know. Okay, wonderful. I just want to make sure that we can see it. Move this over. All right. So in your scorecard, if you skip down, the first section we're going to look at and start working through is measurement and success metrics. And so your first section should be 1A. You're going to want to make a response to how does your organization measure productivity? And then also rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 of how accurate you believe your productivity measurements are. And once you have that typed in as well, there will be a poll for just the scale, the 1 to 10, for you to respond and share out. So as you can see, for this company that had responded, I really like how they have inclusion of individual and team performance in here. I also like that they have set benchmarks. Some of the areas that I suggested for improvement would be including tracking of when the highest productivity takes place during each day, week, month, quarter, year, when we're looking at measuring productivity. And then within every, just keeping in mind that every team, everybody has those ebbs and flows. So if we can look at those measures and track them of when they happen, that also is going to help inform how we support productivity within our teams. Let's go to the next one. So 1B, how do you measure success for individuals and teams within your organization? And then what metrics are used for success? And then again, there's a rating scale. Okay, so we're 5 and above, 5, 6, 8. Good. So again, within our example here, I really like that performance was targeted, completion rates, as well as quality, that all those were included. I would suggest that we include completion rates of a project's steps. So not just the end goal, but what are the rates of completion of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? And then including employee satisfaction scores as well, because that also impacts our overall productivity, is how satisfied the individuals working on a specific project are. And then for the metrics, I kind of along the same line, I really like that they are using the KPIs. I like that they're thinking about delivery times and quality and performance ratings, but again, including those employee satisfaction. Many times employee satisfaction reflects how successful the process, the procedures, the protocols, our systems are. And we get a flag to that if we ask for satisfaction within those on the team. And then also I have just one more thought here too. So when I look at this, I like that it's above a 5. I like that, but I also want to note that we want it closer to that 8 or 10 because there's too much inaccuracy present. This means that communication is still not happening and that there's not enough clarity, and without clarity, we don't know how to move forward. So that would be another area of exploration that I would suggest in this. All right, moving on to measuring retention, 1C. What is your current employee retention rate? How do you measure it? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your overall retention. And so with this, it's within percentage. So if you're at 70%, you put a 7. 80 is 8. Right. So for our example, their response was 88%. I really liked that they were in the 80s. Industry standards really for turnovers are between 10 to 13%. So ideally, we're looking to want to stay at that lower end of 10% or less. That would be our perfect world. Because of that cost of turnover, we all know is huge for any company's bottom line. So that's what we're always targeting and wanting to track. Where are we at and how is it fluctuating with our turnover and retention rate? All right, I'm going to keep us moving. Leadership and training. So 2A looks like this. Does your organization offer leadership and management training? What does it look like? And then again, we're rating it on 1 to 10. How effective do you believe your current leadership training program is? So within our community, this is definitely an area that we can improve on. For this company, the multiple sources of leadership development, I really liked hearing that and seeing that in this scorecard. I really liked that communication was also included and noted as something of an area to pay attention to. One thing of expansion that would definitely improve would be including a differentiation of communication meetings. So like in processing information, transferring information, how is that being done? And is it being individualized and intentionally focused on so that it's accessible to those on the team in the most efficient manner, as well as conflict resolution. And what was interesting is as I went back on my notes for this scorecard of the next section, when we got into the next question, I was very thankful to see that they actually recognized that conflict resolution was something that they wanted to focus as well. So for 2B, are there any trends in your organization of where those in leadership fall short of excellence, and where are they? And then 1 to 10, how strong are the overall leadership skills of in your organization? Being candid is essential in this process. So I really appreciated this and this response, that having conflict resolution identified as something to focus on. Really, my feedback is that shifting to a proactive approach is always the better way to go, because it's less effort, less energy spent when you're acting proactively than reactively. You're getting ahead rather than chasing after. And so we know that that is the most efficient way to address. All right. So we're moving to the next section, performance and productivity skills. So section 3, 3A. What are strategies your organization uses to improve performance? Do you believe they're successful? And if so, give an example of how you've been successful. So whenever there's a request for an example on the scorecard like this or any other tool, it's really, really helpful for whoever you're working with on our team or any other team. So if you do have an example to reflect on, include that there. And then rating it 1 to 10, how engaged are your employees and leaders in performance improvement? So I really liked the response here of using OKRs because they're measurable. That gives us data. I like that there was feedback provided and collaboration. I would like to see more inclusion of time awareness. So for task completion, are we basing how we're scheduling tasks to be completed during the most productive times of the day, week, month that I've referenced? And we all have those ebbs and flows. So we know if we track and collect data through observation, it might be at a specific time during the day, and it's going to be different for each team and each team member. So when we're taking that information and applying it, are we using it for this performance improvement? And this is easy to identify through assessments and even logged interval observations of a quick response, or even looking at productivity logs. So it looks like we're in current productivity levels is the next 3B. What are your current strategies? What are current strategies your organization uses to improve productivity in an individual and company-wide level? Do you think that they're successful? How would you rate that productivity of your employees and teams on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay, so we have quite a bit in the 7s, a little bit in the 8s, right in the middle there. So I like within this company example how time management workshops are already being provided, productivity tools are being provided, and then also some software for project management. Ways to expand and improve would be to identify those needs for supporting productivity in the workplace with those, like I said, the specific times of day that lend to high productivity and attention. Does the environment also eliminate, does it need to have some elimination of visual or auditory distractions? A lot of times the traditional office or traditional setup has lots of distractions that pull folks off from productivity. And so assessing that and really coming back, trying something different, and then adjusting along the way. All right, I'm going to take a breath check-in. Are we all breathing, or do we lose our breath along the way? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're still here, or is there any section we need to go back to before I keep going? Okay, I got it. Thank you, thank you. All right. Executive functioning skills. So are your employees aware and trained in executive functioning skills? And I'm not sure, sometimes I'm not sure if anybody has heard executive functioning skills. These are all the skill areas that are the glue that holds everything. It holds everything together. We need executive functioning skills to perform in any area of life. So that's attention, task management, communication, emotional regulation, social skills, metacognition. So like thinking about your thinking, there's several areas. There's 11 that we like to focus on within Keymaker. So are your employees aware? And then are they receiving any kind of training? What does it look like? And then how strong are their skills based on your observations? You see a few at 10, which is phenomenal. So within this section, what I liked about this company, I like that they are providing some. I do think and Keymaker, I think most of us that have this knowledge of neurodiversity and executive functioning skills are in agreement, and I think you all are too, is this needs to be a high priority for productivity. Given it's the glue for task management and efficiency, it doesn't matter how skilled in a field someone is. If their executive function is lacking, performance won't match. They can come out of with exactly the degree, exactly the training that's necessary. You make this amazing hire and the performance isn't going to match, and you're going to be confused of where it is. And a lot of times when that question is brought up, or someone in that situation brought up, like, hey, this should be an absolutely great hire. They should be performing above par. It's the executive functioning skills that are underdeveloped, at least within 1, 2, 3 areas. So this is something that's great to incorporate in when you're doing onboarding assessments or questionnaires, when you're doing those surveys with your employees, to identify what areas of executive function need some adjustment, support, and additional training. And then within that, so I would say attention is also within executive function, but it's very, very important for productivity. So with attention management, how does your organization address attention management for employees? Are employees educated about the different types of attention? Because there are several types of attention. There's 3 that we like to focus on within Keymaker when we do attention training. Does your organization offer any training on these topics, and what do they look like? And then our first poll response is 1 to 10, how effective is attention managed within your teams? Yeah. And typically we don't think about it of how attention is so essential, and understanding how to manage attention, how to redirect attention within ourselves and our teams, supporting each other for performance. What I liked about this company with their response is that they already knew about time blocking and using it as a tool, and they already were aware of minimizing those distractions. What I also brought up with them and would suggest to others is think about how can you gather data to really hone in on, for those teams, for those employees, when is their highest attention? When is highest attention and focus possible? So that you have those golden hours, those sacred hours where you can put those tasks that really need that high focus and attention there to complete the task. So these are like reports or analysis, creation. Knowing when those times are naturally happening within the brain for an individual and a team is essential for productivity. You can do that by, you can provide attention training. So how do they use sustained attention? So sustained is monotasking, one task. Alternating attention is typically when you're working on a task and your attention is brought from that task to something else, and then you bring it back to the primary tasks that you're working on. And then divided attention is what we like to call multitasking. And we all need to have skills in those 3 areas of attention to function throughout our world. A lot of the focus that I really lean into is that sustain and alternating, because that's what happens a lot in the workplace. How many times does somebody walk in and have a question, and then you've got to address it? You have to come back to your main task. So training on how to shift your focus when you're called off the task to address another, and then successfully refocusing to the original task. For this company, they actually, where we are, they ranked it as a 6. So within that area, really a 6 for effective attention management. Obviously, this needs to be improved. There's a huge gap here, a huge loss for efficiency and productivity due to attention management skills lacking. And then there's 7 where they say how effectively do they think that they're managing and shifting between tasks. Again, that's still too much of a loss of efficiency and productivity due to attention that can be solved through training and creating those pathways and providing those skills. So our second question, if you can respond to that in the pool, how effective do your employees manage shifting their attention between tasks? And what's interesting here is that I'm seeing a lot of these responses are so similar to our example company as well. Okay. So emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is really, it's talking about how do we manage the impact of emotion with life and in our nervous system. So the question is, describe effective emotional regulation skills you've observed amongst your employees. What methods and resources are in place to help employees regulate their nervous system and emotions? And then how often do emotions and stress impact employees' ability to work? How often do these topics actually get acknowledged either in one-on-one or in team settings? And And then our scale response is 1 to 10, how effective are your employees in emotional regulation skills? So I really liked within this example with this company and their responses, how they are using some mindfulness. That's a term a lot of us have heard of and has been in practice for a while, that they're using breaks to reset, kind of like you would reset a phone, reset during stress, and that they do already have some programs and wellness resources available. Improving on that would be to normalize emotional regulation as it's directly related to attention management, and thus it's related to productivity. So, and not to mention company culture. So if we are able to provide tools, to provide options, and really normalize the language and the talk around emotional regulation, emotion management, stress management goes hand in hand with that. And as you likely already know, stress impacts productivity and accuracy and performance. And if that frontal lobe is shut down due to dysregulation and stress, then executive function is also inhibited, meaning that that individual is functioning well below their ability level. It's also impacting their decision making and their producing. Okay. We're widespread over this question of how effective the emotional regulation skills are. All right. Ready for the next section? Operations? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Stay here, Stina. We want to keep talking about emotional regulation. Okay, operations. Meeting schedules. I love this topic. I love talking about when you're picking your time for your meetings because it really does matter. It's not just whatever's open on the calendar. So how do you determine the best times to schedule meetings? What are you using right now to make that decision? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective are your meetings? Yeah. So I really like within this company's response how they had a ranking system. So they based it on priority. They also had an intention to schedule their meetings when it was less busy, so to allow for production and productivity, but also still wanting to look at what's the influx of attention during the week and the day and the month is something that was missing in that response. So just a little bit about meetings and how you can really be strategic about it is it's best to schedule those outside of those peak attention timeframes. So when you have peak attention timeframes, like where you're really engaged, your team's really engaged and able to focus in and produce, that's sacred. That needs to be protected. And meetings really are not the best use of that time. That time should be used for, like I said before, reports, analysis, creation, things that are really taking that higher level of focus. Because meetings are naturally interactive. We have an input and an output that happens during a conversation, during a meeting. So flow of information back and forth that naturally supports attention management and engagement. And so scheduling meetings during a time when team members are actually transitioning out of their high attention times is very strategic to be able to use more of the day, more of the workday in a productive manner. So this way, there's less waste of mental energy on managing focus and attention and more on actually producing and getting things done and moving that needle forward within the team. Got quite a bit of split again. 9s, 8s, 7s, 5s. Okay, so for deadline strategy, We all have deadlines. We all have due dates. So what strategies do you have in place to ensure that your deadlines are met? And then on a scale of 1 to 10 is the poll of, are your teams effective at managing and achieving deadlines? And I really liked within this company is how they noted that they're using a project management software. They're using reminders. They are also reviewing for progress. Even better within those project management software is if there's any kind of feature that allows for praise or like a celebratory feature that can be a dopamine source, because dopamine is the chemical that gives us the ability to focus and pleasure and reinforcer for completion. So one that comes to mind I really love, and it sounds maybe a little bit silly, but I love Asana, is how it creates that little jump of a creature across the screen when you complete a task. And it's beautiful. And for some, it seems really silly, but for others, it's a true support of their brain to maintain focus and productivity because it's giving them that dopamine source. We also want to use reinforcer assessments when we're thinking about how can we support deadline strategy. So when I say reinforcer assessments, you're looking at not only what motivates a team member, but what are the sources that they get that pleasure, that dopamine response to reinforce behaviors that are aligned with efficient task completion. We typically have an idea about what we enjoy and what gives us pleasures as individuals. So you use this as an intervention, either for yourself or as an exterior intervention. You provide it to somebody else if you're a leader or a team member to facilitate that desired result. There's typically 3 areas when we think about shifting and making changes towards a desired result, desired behavior. And we use environment. So like what's going on during and around. Education. So providing training, education on how to do something best. And then consequence, whether that's positive or negative, that reinforces the result that we're seeking. All right, and then naturally what follows our deadline strategy is task and project management. So how do we get to that deadline? Describe your current task management process. What are any snags that come up? And then when you're ready in the poll, how effective do you believe your task management system is? So I really liked within this company response that they're using regular check-ins and using technology. Technology can really be a helpful tool. There needs to be more clarity in communication. So assessing and identifying what appropriate mediums of communication for team members are is going to be essential for actually being able to give directives that lead to fruition of a goal, of a completed task. So asking, how do I process information myself? If I'm a leader or on a team member, how is that happening where I have clear understanding? How do my team members process information most efficiently and clearly? And then also, if you're client facing, is how do my clients process information most effectively? A lot of times that's going to be different, especially if they're coming to us as specialists and for a service, they are not going to be processing information at the same through the same medium or in the same way or at the same pace. So we want to facilitate that and adjust for them so we can accommodate as well. Being proactive in designing your communication methods informed by the data that you gather by asking these questions that you collect from your team members, from your clients. This saves you time and mental energy, not to mention minimizes those miscommunications that then you come back and need to rework. All right. Work arrangement flexibility. So 4D. You're answering the question, describe your organization's flexible work arrangements, if any. And then, do you feel that your organization accommodates different productivity rhythms? And then the poll and scale is, how flexible are the work arrangements for your company on a scale of 1 to 10? So flexibility is definitely that we're not seeing as much flexibility within our work environments right now. And within this company, I did like they are flexible to somewhat within their hours. And then also they did have some remote work options, which really allows for self-management of distractions and to control when there's that need for that hyper focus for a task completion. It made me think of how many times we're in the office or work environment and you're working to get a task, an email, a report done, and then that colleague hops in just for that quick question. And now that takes you off track for 5 to 10 minutes. And then in reality, now we have that, it's after that 5 to 10 minutes. Now it's another 20 to 30 to get back, refocus on the task and in the zone. So sometimes that remote option or an alternative option for a workspace that's a little bit more secluded can be helpful in giving that to your employee. Also, areas for improvement in this area that were suggested was to identify what work arrangements align with the productivity of your team members. Always looking for, I like to call it a Goldilocks level of stimulus. So it's different for each nervous system. If we have too little, we won't maintain attention, and that negatively impacts our productivity. If we have too much, it overloads the nervous system, and that sends us into freeze or fight. And then that frontal lobe shuts down, and now we have negative impact on productivity too. So we're really looking for that just right stimulus. And identifying that productivity rhythm also within teams. So think about, this allows us to hone in on high attention hours for increasing productivity. And when we have that identified, we also within teams can go, here's some team members that have a productivity rhythm during this period of time. And as they're entering that low, there's going to naturally be somebody else that they're entering their high. So now that task can be passed on and led to the next person, kind of like a relay. So if we know when those are, then we can schedule how tasks are delegated out and how we pass them along and work as a team. This also honors times of recharge as necessary after a period of hyperfocus. Many neurodivergent individuals have periods of hyperfocus and hyperproductivity, but they will need time to recharge after that. And if it's not honored, what will happen is there's going to be a crash and there's a loss of productivity and time. All right. Team assembly. So how are we putting our teams together? How does your team, or how does your organization assemble teams? What criteria are used to determine team composition? And then what factors lead the decisions when new teams are being created or realigned? And then when you're ready, the poll and the scale response 1 to 10. How effective do you feel that the way teams are created and managed is in your organization. I really liked within this response how they're using skill sets to inform team assembly. I would have also suggestion would be being cautious with using availability. I want to dig deeper with that is it, if it's capacity, I can understand, but if it's scheduling, if it's availability, like as in the hours on the schedule of a week or a day, I would suggest even exploring asynchronous work as a possibility. And then when forming new teams, considering are the values of these team members also considered? Because if their values are aligned, then they also are going to be able to work more productively, perform more efficiently together. So then for 4F, for task assignment, what parameters are considered when assigning tasks to employees? And then on a scale of 1 to 10 for the poll for this one, and in your ranking, how effective is the manner in which your organization assigns tasks in producing desired results? I like how our example does use skill sets, the workload capacity and deadlines, consider strengths and areas for development. I also would suggest to consider enjoyment. What do the employees take pleasure in working in? This is, again, coming back to dopamine being able to be the source of productivity and focus. Consider the reinforcers that we talked about. What are they getting? Where are they getting that much needed dopamine for focus and task completion? And is that in alignment with how we're assigning the tasks to them? All right, I'm inching into neuroinclusion, organizational success. So 5A, understanding neurodiversity. How familiar is your organization with the concepts of neurodiversity and neuroinclusion? How aware and educated are your employees with neurodiversity and neuroinclusion? Within our company example, I was overjoyed to hear that they have some familiarity with neurodiversity. Obviously, this is an area that for improvement, as they ranked it as a 5, that companies that engage in neurodiversity awareness initiatives and neuroinclusive practices, they know the value of that, because what it does is it gets them close to 50% increase in productivity. Their engagement goes up around 20%, and then around 30-something% improvement on retention. So not only for inclusion of cognitive differences in regards to diversity in the workplace, but also for that competitive edge, for that performance and a healthier bottom line in any company. So what we notice within this area is that this is a definite need for education and support of improvement. And we're seeing this when we do these scorecards with all kinds of companies, and then also I'm seeing this in the polls as well. So for inclusion practices, what inclusion practices are currently in place to support neurodiverse employees? And then there's a couple scales to respond to. The first one being, how effective do you believe these practices are? And then the second one being, how present is neuroinclusion in your organization? So are you using, is there engagement from employees? Are there conversations with leaders? Are there actual training programs in place? I liked within this company that they already had quiet workspaces and flexible work hours. I also encouraged them and supported them in creating formal and specific supports that spoke directly to neurodiversity. So we normalize the awareness of the nervous system. So with that awareness, then and options to how they can self-manage and then co-manage along with their managers and their company and their colleagues, one's nervous system, then their brain function and increased performance overall. So it's kind of it's a domino effect. It all leads together for that end result. And for how present. Non-existent is so far. It gave me the nervous head itch to read that. Oof, it's hard. What's great is that neurodiversity and neuroinclusion is coming up more and more in conversations. It's just, it's coming. The tidal wave is building. I really believe that, but we need to continue to have these conversations and bring them into other spaces. Those of us that have this interest and have this knowledge take this information, like from our discussion today and from other trainings that we've participated in together, and have them in other environments so more and more folks can participate and be aware. All right. Employee support. So how does your organization support employees? It's a very open question. And then the poll response, the ranking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think your employees would rate their awareness of what support or resources are available to them? What practices are put in place and built to build awareness and communication for what they need to do their best work? I really like how our company, our example company, did have wellness programs in place, and they did recognize that communication was important to focus on. I really emphasize when working with them is to include communication resources during onboarding, to include and communicate what resources and supports through regular updates and reminders for those that have already been with the company a while. And then include in their surveys to really intertwine and integrate questions that could to lead them into discovery and awareness of other ways that they can support themselves and higher performance, but also to identify potential ways that the company can support neuroinclusion, productivity that employees may not be aware of. And then also to provide on a regular basis education, scaffolding, and reinforcement of how to access. So we've got some 8s, some 6s, 3s. All right. So I really, let's see. We have a couple more here. I think what I'm going to do is I'll do a recording after because I want to honor everybody's time, and I will send that out with responses to this, but I would encourage you to fill out and do your responses for the remaining sections of the scorecard. Really take me up on that and send me an email with it attached. I'm more than happy to give you an email review and response, or you can schedule with me if you would rather do it this verbally. Let's see. And then just mark we left off at 5D. Yeah. If you want, so the email there that you can connect with me at is the info@Keymaker. That's our direct line to if you'd rather do talk or text. LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. If you have any questions that you threw in there, another tool that we use is they'll put in a list. I know that we're ran out of time, and it's because there's so much to talk about. But I will follow up with a response with that too. So keep an eye out via email, on LinkedIn. A lot of times I post response to these questions as well. So you can use them as tools. Reach out if you'd like further support, or you noted an area through the scorecard that you'd like some tips on or how to explore establishing this further within your company. Thank you all so much.